So, you're a digital artist, and maybe you've started getting curious about animating some of your artwork. And maybe you've even taken that step to look into some software and apps that might be able to help you with that. Apps like Blender or Toon Boom, or maybe you've even gone so far to take a look at After Effects. That one's a little complicated. But let me ask you this. Have you ever tried working with PowerPoint? Now, look, I know how that sounds. It's crazy, right? PowerPoint is where creativity goes to retire. It's the source of all those corporate, boring presentations doomed to put you to sleep no matter how hard you try to stay awake. I get it. But there is the thing that PowerPoint is actually capable of a lot more than you may think. Now, I've spent nearly 30 years as an instructional designer for some of the biggest Fortune 50 companies across the world. And one of the things that I've had to lean on pretty heavily is PowerPoint as a main tool to get my job done. All that time, all that experience means I've kind of developed a lot of knowledge along the way. And this is where we're going to kind of start laying some of it out. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to animate your digital art in ways that may just blow your mind. And if you stick around to the end, I want to show you how to take some of these techniques and really kind of push them, take them to the extreme. Because, once you see what's possible, I promise you, PowerPoint is never going to look the same way again. Now, this is something a little bit different than what I usually post. It is still related to art, but we're going to take that art and animate it in PowerPoint and really kind of push it beyond its limits. And I want to create like a new little playlist to kind of feature some of these videos I'll be publishing in the future. So, since all this stuff is going to lean into my professional experience, we're going to call this playlist the Slide Hustle. So, welcome to the Slide Hustle. Let's get to it. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Real quick, selfless plug, don't forget to subscribe, like, share. Now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into some crazy animations. Now, in interest of just making sure we're real clear about what we're up to, I'm not looking to do anything all that unusual than what PowerPoint already offers. We're going to be working with a very basic animation, but we're going to do it in a very unique way. That's kind of the hook here. So let's start by getting an object on the screen that we can manipulate. And I'm just going to insert something really simple to work with. Let's do this star shape. The animation we're going to be working with today is the spin animation. It's been available for a long time and it is under your emphasis animations. So again, I have my objects selected here. I'm just going to add the spin animation to it and you can see it spins. There's not really much more to it than that. Come over here and I want to open up my animation pane so I can do a little bit more manipulation. And again, there are other ways to do this. You can do this through a right click menu, but I think it's a little bit easier to visualize here over on the right hand side of my screen. And the beauty of this is how we can manipulate it here under the effect options. Okay, so the star was just kind of getting the basics down. Let's go ahead and take this away from objects and move into something a little bit more interesting and realistic. So let's take that same exact spin animation, but this time we're going to apply it to an illustration. Now, this isn't my illustration. This is something I just kind of did a quick search on Pixabay. Just wanted to look a cat. That's all I was looking for. And the whole purpose of the cat here is that we're going to animate its tail. So the animation will look a little something like this. Okay, not too shabby, right? And the beauty of it is, again, this is not just a simple star. This is really kind of a more effective animation, a little bit more realistic, if you will. Remember, it's all in the settings. So if I go over here to my animation pane on the right-hand side and click on the animation, you can see how this was done. Instead of a 360-degree turn, I'm only looking for 25 degrees. That's really kind of an essential to how this works. It doesn't have to go all the way around. I've also got it auto-reversing, and I have it going counterclockwise. So in other words, this tail object here is a separate object from the rest of the cat, and it's only turning 25 degrees out of that full 360-degree circle. And then when it's done, it auto-reverses to come back to where it started. The only thing that's left to do after that is just determine how slow or fast you want that to happen under your timing effects. Oops. And also, I'm going to loop that. I'm going to make it repeat until the end of the slide, so it'll just keep going and going and going. Okay, so what's the trick here? Well, the trick is, again, in the spin animation and its settings, but there is one other little element here that we need to pay attention to. Now, this cat, as you probably figured it out, is not just one element. It's actually several elements all in one. They've been grouped together. So let me go ahead and ungroup. And what I can do here is I can show you the tail specifically in and of itself. So the tail It's kind of its again own unique object here. In other words, what I did was I took the image and I cropped it, and so I can remove the tail from the rest of the body. And then that tail is animated by itself, while the rest of the body can just sit there lifeless, but the tail does all the work. Now, the spin animation has been applied to this tail, but notice the shape of the object. Not only did I crop it away from the body, but once it was completely cropped, I also grew that shape out to twice the width it would ordinarily be. And the reason for this is inherent to how the spin animation works. Spin animation wants to turn on the center. And so if this object was cropped a little bit differently, and it was cropped like you might crop an object like this, like that, and if you did the spin animation on it, what you're going to see here is that it turns the wrong place. So let me go ahead and I'll pull this up against the body again, and you can see how this works. So there it is, and if I hit the animation, notice, again, it turns in the center, and the back of the tail comes away from the rest of the body. It interrupts the illusion. Okay, so what we're going to do is just change our crop. We're going to grow the shape out to roughly about twice the length, so that way the center point is where it can still pivot, but we just wanted to pivot where we wanted to pivot. And that center point will be at the end of the tail that connects to the body. So now that we've kind of changed the shape of the object, we can put it back where it was before, and then we can again do that animation knowing that the pivot point is going to be a little bit truer to where we want it to be. And to kind of help sell this illusion a little bit better, we can take this tail object and we will send it to the back behind all the other objects, like so. And there we go. Our animation is a little bit more effective. Now, this next one is trying to take this cat animation and moving it up to kind of another level from there. Started with some basic objects. We're working on some simple animals. Now let's take it to the next level and we'll take a look at Ghost of Elvis. Now, Ghost of Elvis is something that's a little bit unique, I understand. A little bit of motivation behind this, I should probably explain. Every year, I do a PowerPoint animated type game show for a bunch of coworkers. And because it's Halloween oriented, I usually try to find some sort of a ghostly host to kind of play as the avatar for the game. And this particular year that I did this game, it was the Ghost of Elvis. So that's why he's kind of monochromatic and he looks somewhat translucent. But remember, that's not really what we're here to see. The point that I'm trying to make here, though, is that in this case, this artwork is not something I pulled off of Pixabay. This is something I created on my own. But more importantly, it's not an original piece of artwork, it's two pieces of artwork. Elvis is top and bottom, and that's how we're going to do the animation on this. Again, notice the same little trick is being applied. I have the shape of the animated object roughly about twice the width I want it to be, so it can pivot on the center point that I want to establish for myself. And since it's been established that that pivot point is now at his waistline, we can get this nice little interesting dancing effect on the Ghost of Elvis. Looks a little something like that. Instead of a 360-degree turn, in this case, it's only going to be 15 degrees, and I am going to do it counterclockwise. I'm going to have it auto reverse so it can come back to where it started. And then I'm going to have it go at a duration of about 2 seconds. And the reality is I fooled around with all the different settings until I found what I liked. And then I'm going to have it repeat until the end of the slide, so it goes on a loop and just keeps going and going and going. Now, the beauty of this, again, is that this wasn't much to set up. I just needed to have a little bit of forethought when I did the illustration. The illustration was all about understanding that I was going to be essentially making a mannequin. And that mannequin was going to be articulated at the waist. So when I did the drawings for this, I made sure that the shirt extended well below the waist, so that way the hips could move around and not create some sort of a gap in the body that would make it look less than realistic. So this looks really neat when you apply a relevant background. And this is what it looked like in the game when I did the original presentation. We had Elvis on stage and he was doing, his little dance while we were playing the game. Now, by the way, I should probably also point out here that was a fun little animation to do, but it wasn't the only one I did for that Halloween game. Ghost of Elvis was a lot of fun to draw, but what's more fun than one Elvis? 5 Elvi. Elvis? Elvi? I'm not sure. But here it is. So we already talked about Jailhouse Rock Elvis, but Blue Hawaii Elvis was a little bit different. He had a articulated elbow that was helping him strum his little ukulele. Something similar was going on with Comeback Elvis. He had a lower arm that was strumming the guitar that was animated. And then Gospel Elvis and Las Vegas Elvis had a swinging arm, almost like they were kind of doing fist bumps. Okay. Now, if you want to see all of these, let me know in the comments. The game itself was something I did a couple of years ago, so pulling out some of these old drawings wasn't exactly difficult, but it would require me to kind of go do a little digging. If you want to see it, I'm happy to pull it out, but let me know in the comments, and I'll do it based on feedback. Now, in the meantime, let me move on, and I'd like to show you one other thing, a way to kind of take this to the extreme. Now, the spin animation by itself is fun. But what happens when you do the spin animation more than once, when multiple elements? Now you have a little bit more articulation, a little bit more of an interesting way to kind of use this to your benefit. So here's what I had in mind. A little something I did for a family and friend Christmas card. It was a little illustration, but I decided to animate it this year and just have a little fun having Santa play guitar. There's 2 points of articulation on this. Take a look at the animation pane over here, and you'll see that basically I have a picture 263 and picture 264. And that's because Santa's actually made of 3 elements rather than 2. There's the body, there's one arm that's articulated, and a second arm that's articulated. So in other words, one arm is strumming the guitar, the other arm is moving up and down the guitar neck. And if we take a look at our settings for the effect options, we can kind of figure out which one is which. Picture 263, I did not label, but I can tell you it's the arm and the guitar neck because it's only moving 15 degrees counterclockwise. Again, all those other settings are remarkably the same though. Auto reverse, 3 seconds on slow. I did put a little bit of delay on it, but it wasn't really necessary. The important part is that I have it repeating until the end of the slide, so it goes on a loop. And that loop does exist once it goes into presentation mode. We're not going to see it in this build mode right here. The other arm has some different settings. If we take a look at it, we can see that this one has a 30-degree clockwise spin to give it that simulation that it's playing guitar. So you can see it's a much wider arc on that circle than the arm that's moving up and down the guitar neck. Now, I did say I wanted to take this to the extreme. This isn't quite it. I got one more thing I'm going to show you, but it does relate to the Santa. What happens when you take Santa and you put him in a room and you do a whole bunch more animation? We're going to get a little something that looks like this. And as you can probably see, there's a whole lot of different animations here in this animation pane, a whole slew of them. But just imagine that for a second, taking a little bit of time and really kind of getting in here and getting detail oriented and playing around with a lot of different spin animations can really create something that's very, very unique. And if you play it on that loop in the presentation mode, I think you'll find that it does a pretty interesting effect. Now, full disclosure, these aren't all spin animations. Some are definitely the spins. We already talked about Santa Claus, but the elf heads and the elf arms sipping coffee or cocoa or whatever that is, those are all spin animations also, just again, different settings on the effect options. But there's also blinking lights, snowflakes falling in the background, and all of these things are different types of animations that we can talk about in a different video if you have any interest. So that's really all I had to show you for the day. The reality here is I got a bunch of these coming. So come on back to the channel. Don't forget, again, subscribe, link, share, and don't forget to hit that notification button because as soon as I got my next little trick out, I'd like you to take a look at it. In the meantime, thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. I'm going to go work on my slide hustle some more. You do the same. Take care.